Welcome to Supercharge, your JavaScript. I'm Nico Reindl, one of the founders of My Regional Food, and today I will introduce you to about 15 tips which will supercharge your JavaScript. All those tips are some a bit confusing, so please don't get frustrated, because initially I planned the talk to do some live coding, but then I thought I would just put some screenshots in, because when I do live coding, you will look at me coding for about 2/3 of the talk and compiling the code, which is kind of boring. So I took the essence of the codes and also highlighted which of the tips is the most important part in the code. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first tip is about the spread operator. So the spread operator can be very useful. The spread operator is, by the way, those 3 dots, but you see it in about a minute. So for example, you have an object, which is a pet, which has the name Henry. So you want to set the type and the size of the pet, which the type is cat and the size is 60, whatever, it's 60. So you could do it this way, or you could use the spread operator, which is underlined in red. By the way, all those essences are highlighted, underlined in red. So you have the pet, Henry, and you can now reassign the object, use the spread operator to spread out the pet, and then use it this way for the type, cat, and size, which becomes very useful because, for example, you have 2 objects, a pet and pet attributes. You want to combine them, and you could do it this way when you set the pet type to the pet attributes type, but this gets very tedious because, for example, you have an object with about 80 or more values. It kind of gets a bit dirty in programming sometimes, you know. So you just take those 2 objects and assign it to a new, to the pet again, and spread out both values. This is a very good lifesaver if you have huge objects, which is great. So you can also, maybe some of you already know, you can deconstruct objects. You have the pet, and on the object is the value name. And in curly brackets, you can extract the name or the type. And when you combine it with the spread operator, which becomes very cool, so you have the pet, then you deconstruct size and color, and with the spread operator, when you use it in those deconstructing, you get all those values which are left on the object, which in this case is name Henry and the type is cat, which becomes very useful because you can use it to delete some values of the object. Use it all the time. It's amazing. You can also use it to put together 2 arrays or more. So for example, you have banana types. By the way, bananas actually have different kinds. I googled it. It's amazing. There are red bananas, which are obviously red, which is cool. So you can do iterate over the array of more bananas, and for each banana you push it to the other banana types, which is already a bit simplified than the usual loops. But you can also just use the spread operator and spread out both arrays into a new array, which is also very cool. You can now put values at the start of the array or at the back of the array, and you can shuffle them around. It's very, very flexible. So that's pretty cool. Next tip on the spread operator, you have a function, which is, you have 3 arguments, x, y, and z, which the function just multiplies them together, and you can call it with 3 numbers. But what if you want to add more numbers or just 2 numbers? You can use the spread operator and use the arguments, spread operator numbers. And in the arguments, you can now have the numbers as an array of all those numbers. You have to rewrite the function a bit. But now you can, at the multiply function, at 3, 5 or more, 2, you can even put 100 values in. And now what's very cool, for example, you have an array with a lot of numbers, and you don't want to type each number in or iterate over it or whatever crazy kind of stuff you want to do. You just use the array and spread it into the arguments, which is very handy and saves you a lot of time. So that's for the spread operator. The next one is not a curse word. It might look like it, but it's the ternary operator, the logical and the logical or operator. So the ternary operator, the question mark, you can use it to substitute the if statement. So you can use if the size is greater than 10, then you call the function console log big, and if it's false, you console log small, which is pretty cool because you can also write it that way. You console log size greater than 10 and big or small, which becomes quite handy because you save a lot of small if statements, and that reduces your code size and is for better readability. You can also use it for assigning values, for example. You have the name of the size, and if the size is greater than 10, it's big, and if it's not greater than 10, it's small. So which becomes very useful. So you have the logical AND operator, you have the function which plays the Batman theme, and you have a variable if Batman is coming, which is always true because it's constant. And if Batman is coming, you want to play the Batman theme. And if not, then well, undefined is not that clean. So what you can do is just use the logical AND operator, and if Batman is coming, you play the theme. And if he's not coming, you don't play the theme. So, and to assigning the values, for example, you want to assign a value to another value if it is not undefined. So you check if it's not undefined, it's just the value, and not, then you use some fallback value. So the thing here is, it kind of looks a bit, well, not so clean. So what you can do, you can use the OR operator, and if that value is undefined, then you just use the fallback value, which looks a bit clean in my opinion. So, which is one of the biggest cleanup tricks I do all the time now, which I can't live without, is you use the ternary operator to cut those undefined check chains by a lot. So you see you have, for example, when you want to check a very deeply nested field, if it's greater than 10, you have to check all those values in front. If this is not undefined and this is not undefined and this, it gets very tedious. I even cut the code a bit on the last field. I did not even write the second subfield because it gets so long. And it gets even more ridiculous when you start to nest if-else statement. Don't do it, please. So what you can do is just use the ternary operator and write a question mark so the code gets a lot smaller and it's very more readable. So, pretty cool. So now coming to some useful tricks. So the first useful trick is when you have an array of numbers, you want to get the first few numbers. What you can do is just adjust the size of the array to 3. And now the array is 0, 1, and 2, which is pretty useful. By the way, the array now gets edited, so the new array is now smaller. And what can you do when you want to get the last one, like 7, 8, and 9? What you can do is you slice the array with a negative number, so you get 7, 8, and 9, which is pretty useful because now they are the last values. One thing to note here is you have to assign the result of the slice method to a new value because a numbers array doesn't get reassigned. So get the first and last element, easy. So next one is dynamic objects, dynamic values. So you have an object with its Doge, the name is Doge, the crypto is Dogecoin, and you have a dynamic value, which is above very dynamic, and the value is, wow, much dynamic. So what can you do with it? So for example, you can use the reduce operator. By the way, in the reduce operator, you can use it, for example, for, you have again a lot of numbers, and you use the reduce operator to sum up those values. So what you can do is use the reduce operator for much fancier stuff, and you have an array of fruit object, the type is melon, and you have a price, and you have a big array of it. What do you need to do when you, for example, on fruit prices, so where the melon is now with the value 34. So what you now can do, instead of writing a lot of huge complex code which is error prone, you just use the reduce operator, and you now can create with dynamic values a map, so you can result in melon is 34. By the way, how reduce works is you have the value a and v. So a is the starting value, which is defined after the second argument, which is the empty curly braces, which is an empty object. So a is in the beginning an empty object, and in this empty object, the first dynamic value is the type, which is melon, and v.price, which is the price, which is 34. And then you return a, and now a becomes an object, which is melon 34, and then you add the next one, which is kiwi, and then titurone. So, pretty useful. And the last tip, which is also pretty nice, you have an array, which is maybe pretty huge, which is user, and you have a lot of values in it. Now you want to only have unique values in it, so there's not a lot of John in there. So what you can do is either go to Stack Overflow and copy some code, and you don't quite know what it does, but it works. But what you also can do, you can use how collections work, and now you make use of the property of a set. A set collection is a collection where no value is duplicated in it. So out of this big array, you create a new set, which gets rid of all those duplicated values, and from the set you make an array again. Now you have removed all those duplicated values and you have all unique values, which is just one line of code and which is very readable. So, these are all the tips. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I have supercharged your JavaScript.